and atomic radii. So if this was my board, I got the definition there. It's the distance between the nucleus and the valence electrons for an atom. So basically the radius, that would be the radius, and that kind of gives you an indication of the size of the atom. There's two trends listed there that you can fill in. And a trend just tells you a general trend. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect all the time, but in general, the period trend for electronegativity is it decreases. Well, why does the atom get smaller? Going across the period. Okay? So, I know you guys are writing this down. Okay? I want to give you just a look at this. So, you're going to have to maybe stop writing here in a second because I'm going to switch screens and I'll come back to it. But this screen would be like a drawing that I would have. And I'd have, if I did a better job of this, it'd be bigger. And above each atom, I would write its picometer size. So I think this starts like at 150 something, and then it ends at 70 something picometers. You don't have to copy this down the circles. But what you can do with your drawing down there, just like mine, you can draw an arrow, and that arrow represents if you go across. If you go across from left to right, and that's our trend we want to look at, that's what all of you guys did, if you did period, then the radii decreases in size. Okay? As you go down, the radii increases in size. So that's what happens with the atom and its trend. So, a lot of you guys use this trend, didn't you? A lot of you use this trend. I think all of you use this trend in which to explain why your characteristic or your property you were looking at behaved the way it did. So this shouldn't be anything new to you, depending upon which we looked at, group or period. So going back to our original slide that you were copying down, if I'm on period, how can I explain that? Well, why does the atom shrink? Okay, what's being done to the atom as you go across? So what's being done to the atom as you, what characteristics or what things are added to the atom as you go across? Let me know. What's added to the atom when you go across? Anything? You guys should know. So as we go from element number 3 to element number 4 to 5, all the way to 10, what's being added each successive atom? Positive particles, which are called protons. What else is being added? Electrons, right? So if electrons and protons are both being added, what do we know about the attraction between the protons and electrons according to Coulomb's law? What's going to happen to the force? Because they're going to go up. If it goes up, then what happens? There's a stronger pull on that level of electrons and it shrinks. Does that make sense? Is that a reasonable explanation? Okay? Good. The group trend is a lot easier to explain. You go down a group, you're adding on an extra energy level. So what you're doing is you're going here for the first one, and the second one, you go here, hey, it gets bigger. Third level added with the third period, fourth level added to the fourth period down a group, and so on and so forth. So it gets bigger. Okay? Even though there's more protons and electrons, just like going across, it doesn't really matter because you add that extra level, it takes it out further. So you guys' thoughts on that idea of atomic radii? Does that make sense? Okay, so you've got 3 questions to answer there. I'm going to let you do that later. Every section has 3 questions related to it. Okay, except for one of them. And I need to change one of the questions here in a second. So, if you're done writing that down, or even if you're not done writing it down, look at question number 11 on the second page. Look at question number 11. And you need to change that to electron affinity. It says, which of the following has a smaller electronegativity? Make that electron affinity, just like everything else there. Okay? So you can cross it out, maybe point above if you don't want to write it in or whatever. Okay, one last thing before some of you guys need to work on your boards and try to get them done. So what I did first period was I took pictures of every board so that if you don't get around to get all your notes done today or your board's not finished, you can finish that today and I will take a picture of it and then people can take notes on it. Okay? Yep.
For these it says period trending, so the trend is you only did 4.
Right, so there's another, now this class is smaller, so what I have to do is I have to pull resources from another class that did that trend, so that, in fact, I can get them out today and have you look at one of the classes for trends that you don't have. Or you can wait and just take the notes off of Google Classroom, because Google Classroom, this is what I did. Okay, so this is what I did, is I went to Google Classroom and I attached excuse me. So I attached these boards so that they can access them and they can pick out the information they need to answer their questions on there. And I'll do the same for you guys. But you guys are a smaller class, you won't have everything. Okay? So there's electron affinity. And so some of you guys got a small section for the reasoning. You don't have to put all of the conclusion down, okay? Just read it and then shorten it up so that you know what the reasoning is behind it, okay? I won't have a lot of questions. We'll have a quiz. It'll be a summative quiz on... it'll be a summative quiz that we'll have on Tuesday, but we'll do a practice quiz on Monday on Google Forms so that you can practice looking at your notes, using your notes to answer questions. Some of these questions are going to be the same type of questions you'll have. That's why I listed them down below, so you can kind of use the trends in that. I think that'll be helpful for you guys. Okay. The last thing I'm going to talk to you about today, because I know you guys need time to look at some of these. If you go to the section down below atomic radius, the last section, I've given you all the information for what happens here. So, a cation is something that a positive ion's formed. Okay, so here's potassium in its natural state. Okay, so it's most likely going to lose this electron out here. So this electron out here it's going to lose. If it loses that electron, guess what happens? It loses the whole outer shell. And then it becomes K+. So what happens to the size of the atom? Gets smaller because it loses its whole outer energy levels. Does that make sense? So that's a trend. So when cations are formed, they're going to lose the whole outer level. Now when anions are formed, so this is an anion down here, An anion on there says it's a negative ion that's formed. Well, here's sulfur, okay? And sulfur picks up 2 electrons. It picks up one here and here when it goes over to be a -2 charge. Does it pick up any protons? No. What do we know about electrons if they're in close proximity to one another? Do they attract or repel? Like charges do what? Repel. If we put 2 more electrons in there, what do you think they're going to do if there's not any other protons added? They're going to push out. They're going to repel. They're going to push away from each other. So that's why it increases in size. So that's a trend. So cations are positively charged ions because they lose electrons. And when they lose electrons, they actually lose their whole outer level. When we have anions formed, they form to gain electrons to get and guess what? Guess how many electrons they always tend to want to become stable. What do they always want to become stable? How many electrons will they have in the outer shell? 8. So all atoms tend to want to get stable and they want to get 8. Okay? So, any questions? I'm not going to answer too many more questions because I know that your time's valuable and you want to take some notes if your board's done. First thing I would do is I'd take notes on your board. And then when other groups are ready for you to take notes off of theirs, they can have it out and they can look at it. And if they got questions about it, you can hopefully answer those. Okay? I will be around if you guys got questions.